podcast focused on trends shaping the future of manufacturing. I'm Alexandria Burek, your host, here with A.W. Schultz, two thought leaders with a passion for people and manufacturing. Today and every episode, we are diving deep into the advancements, sustainable practices, and dynamic changes transforming how we produce everything.
And now welcome Alexandria Burek and A.W. Schultz.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Factory of the Future. I'm here with A.W. Schultz. I'm Alexandria Burek, and today we are going to be talking about the future of leadership. We are so excited. A.W. brought this super cool topic, and we've just been nerding out about it for the last 2 weeks, so we're very excited to get into this episode. I'm going to turn it over to A.W. since he was the one to bring the topic to the table. He's going to give us an overview of what exactly we're talking about here when we think about the future of leadership. And we'll give some examples of how we've done this in our own professional backgrounds, as well as how you might be able to do this in your day-to-day life on the factory floor. A.W.?
Yeah, I was tasked with finding out what I saw as the future of leadership. And I came across a TED Talk by Debbie Lovich, who is a senior partner at Boston Consulting Group, and she does a lot with transformational change and leadership. But what in her TED Talk, and as further research came into it, she came down to three core principles of what drives futures into leadership, and one of them, as we were talking before the show, was understanding that leaders face challenges and being able to challenge what we determine to be like the status quo. Ask yourselves, why have we done this in the past, and why do we continue to do this? But a lot of times there's bureaucracies that are inputted that prevent other organizations or individuals from challenging it and going further into understanding what needs to be done to change out what those standard processes are. The second is fostering agency and having flexibility. So it kind of goes on with the status quo, is like, if there's an easier way of doing A, let's do A. It's that idea between the shortest between A and B is a straight line. What can we do to eliminate those hurdles or those obstacles that we have on there? And then the second is blend behavioral science with real world applications and create a thriving culture. A lot of words, but essentially what that says is like, how do we put autonomy onto the workforce? How do we build answering the question, what's in it for them? And for me, those were three concepts that kind of resonate with Alexandria, because she tended to really like them when I shared them with her. And it's interesting how Debbie goes through different examples as she's talking about how this incorporated into real world.
Yeah. So A.W., real quick, let's just recap for the audience as we get into the example we brought to the table. So number one, the first core principle is challenging the status quo. Number two is creating a environment where employees have autonomy and flexibility to accomplish their, designated tasks or goals. And number three is applying behavioral science to real world life applications in the business world, right? So A.W. shared that Debbie has illustrated this through one particular business example, and we're excited to talk about that. So A.W., why don't you walk us through how Debbie illustrated these three core principles in the business case that she shared during her TED Talk?
Yeah, so it was interesting because we've all gone through the COVID thing, and we're probably tired of some stories that we've heard about how we all got through COVID. But one particular example that she shares is, so the Mr. Cooper Group was a financial services that primarily was doing a lot with call centers. So when COVID hit, guess what? Everyone's got to go home. But they immediately were able to regroup their business and essentially have people working from home doing the call centers onto it. And as the we worked through the COVID incident or pandemic, they realized that they were becoming more efficient. They were attracting more talent, and they allowed them to still continue from working from home.
Yeah.
And I like that example because it's applying like what's in it for them. And well, working from home is nice. I remember one example where I was calling in a call center, and I picked up on the lady was from Colorado, enjoying the snow from her home on during the fire by taking my call and offering advice on troubleshooting some problem I had.
Yeah.
But that was the example that she had gave, and I think what did you want to say about that, Alexandria?
Yeah. So, when I think about that example of immediately pivoting from, a full in-office call center to a completely remote workforce, I think it's a great example of challenging the status quo, right? Like, why do we actually need this building if we're accomplishing everything we need to? I'd imagine that they're paying quite a bit for a lease, quite a bit for utilities, and most corporations in those scenarios are leasing the furniture that the business uses. Like, no business actually owns the office chairs and the cubicles. They typically lease it. So, eliminating those sunk costs basically to accomplish the same objective is a great example of challenging the status quo. I think working from home by its own nature creates an environment where employees have a sense of agency and flexibility, right? Like, especially, if you want to get down into the specifics, a employer could be very prescriptive in the objectives and the deadlines and let the employees, decide on how that best works for them to get that done. And usually with that, you're going to see a higher job satisfaction and, commitment to the end objective, because people feel like they're part of the solution. They're part of creating that experience. And then, when I think of applying the behavioral science to the real world, I think about all the stress that's associated with workers getting to the office, kind of unnecessary stress. And I think a lot of people after COVID kind of came away with this new perspective on what is really stress that's warranted versus not. I think when you're working from home, you're not dealing with the stress of traffic. You're not dealing with the stress of additional laundry as much. You're not dealing with the stress of meal prepping and having all of your meals made for lunch, or trying to make it out in between conference calls to go get a bite to eat and the expense that comes with that. So like, there's a reduction in financial stress on the employee. They're not spending money on gas and all these other things to get to the office. There's a reduction in stress related to like time management and rushing around. And then there's the reduction in also just kind of the environment. Like, when I think about working from home versus working in the office, I've noticed that the constant noise, chatter, just conversations are very like distracting to me, and kind of like they just create this like underlying sense of friction and just edginess. Like, I'm just like, oh, as soon as I like get out of there. And I don't feel that at home because I'm in my home. It's peaceful, it's quiet. So I'm reducing those levels of stress. So when I think about applying, behavioral sciences to the workforce and to the job market, working from home is a great way to eliminate and kind of reduce this unnecessary stress for people who can otherwise work from home. So that's kind of the way I think about that applied in this particular example. And I think about what have we done, you and I both, and everybody else who's listening to this, let's all take a second to think, how can I challenge the status quo at my current job? What processes just really don't seem to make sense or haven't been even looked at in a while? Where can I give my team some autonomy and flexibility to decide how to accomplish the given tasks and goals that we've outlined for our team? The third is, where can I reduce stress, right? Behavioral science, I think just a constant base layer of stress is going to create subpar performance. So where can I reduce that layer of stress for my team? And so that's kind of what I think about. In my day job, one of the ways I've challenged the status quo is by really rethinking the use of technology. So again, taking siloed technologies and integrating them. I've challenged the status quo in thinking about Why are we managing documents manually? That's something I've become really obsessed with this year in 2025 with the swift advancements in AI. How can we use AI to manage documents in the transportation industry? That's something I'm currently researching and scheduling calls with leaders and people who are dealing with the same issues to say, hey, we're all really smart people. Why can't we find a better solution? Why can't we challenge the status quo of hiring full-time employees to manually upload and tag and name documents when we could easily use AI to do that? And then, from an agency and flexibility standpoint, with these objectives that I have, I like to think I give my team the ability to customize that business process so it fits into their flow versus me being very rigid in what I'm expecting them to do when I'm asking them to do it and how I'm asking them to do it. I'm trying to be open-minded with that. I think that one presents a little challenge, and I think that could be a double-edged sword. So I think if you're a leader out there who's trying to create an environment with agency and flexibility, I think it really comes down to knowing the worker who you're giving this agency and flexibility to. Some people are going to love that, run with it, and thrive. Other people are going to be very challenged because you're not giving them a specific step-by-step process that's very rigid. So I think you have to flirt a very fine line with knowing your workforce, knowing the team you're leading, knowing who's going to thrive with more direction and who can be kind of left to their own devices, and make that a customized business process that fits in with their other responsibilities. And I think just as leaders, we should all be working to serve the people that are on our team, right? So reducing stress, reducing friction in business process, all of that kind of is a way, in my opinion, of applying behavioral science to the business world. So what do you think, AW? Like, what are some of the examples that that come to mind when we talk about these three topics?
I was going to ask you, like, how do you manage that? Because I was trying to think of myself as you're thinking of yourself as a young leader, and you're not running the organization. However, you do have a level of authority and influence.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can't. This is the hard part. Is like you can't just be that lone gunner out there for that challenging that status quo. You have to create a bit of.
An army.
I'm going to say loyalty. What were you saying?
Army. Like an army of people. Yeah.
That kind of buy into it. So
Yep.
It's not just so much of waiting for that meeting to say, like, why do we do it this way? Well, that's where we're going to do it. You almost need I'm going to use the word butter them up to like where you can begin to pick away at that status quo.
Yeah.
And I like how you mentioned that, because just saying it is easy to say, but the implementations of it can be somewhat difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I had a different example that I was going to share with you. One was when I was in an organization, and they insisted on doing maintenance on the weekends, because the hourly people, they wanted to work on Monday through Friday, and then weekends was like an overtime. And I'm probably telling the same story of manufacturers are doing right now. But the problem, and I like telling this story, was, you're doing some of the critical inspections on your equipment that you want to increase the reliability on, and you're doing it. And in this case, the supervisors had the weekend off, so they give out these packets to the technicians, and expect them to do the work. And oh, by the way, this place, some of the senior people, they really didn't want to work the weekends. They're kind of
white collar, Monday through Friday, blah, blah, blah.
There was a white collar, but so you wouldn't have the engineers in, but you also wouldn't have your senior technicians in that had experienced a lot of this stuff before. So it'd be new guys thinking all this stuff. And then the next morning or Monday mornings are coming around and things are all chaos. Like, what happened? I guess my long story short is like convincing them to challenge the status quo is that instead of having your maintenance on the weekend, let's do it in the middle of the week when stores are open, resources are available, engineers are there.
Yeah.
And let's take that critical piece of equipment and do it then.
Yeah.
And we'll just run it overtime, but we'll be more efficient.
Yeah.
And it was very hard for some of these baby boomers with an old mentality that's the way we can't way to do it. So for me, it took I had an army of resources to butter them up, saying, let's try it. And we used as a case study on one line, and over 3 months, we saw a gentle increase in productivity. Now, the other example was they weren't really tracking it correctly, but they were getting more throughput. And that's really cool. That's really the deliverable at the end of the day, is that the product they're delivering is getting on shelves and they're meeting their orders.
I think that's a great example. And I think that's something that our listeners can directly take from the podcast and bring to the table. It's funny you brought up the, kind of building up the army or buttering people up. I was just having a conversation with one of my coworkers about that this morning. And I explained to him, I said, usually if you have an idea about something, you need to rally a whole troop of people around you to advocate for that change before you can even get remote buy-in on that, right? So to your point, exactly right. And with the maintenance, it at face value would seem like the best solution. Well, no, we're not. The lines are down. It's the best time to do it. We're not going to impact our, productivity time. We're going to get this done on the weekends. But the unintended consequence and the problem, to your point, is we don't have the people who are currently using the information or using the machinery, to provide the input. We don't have the ability to, troubleshoot with engineers. And great other point with the stores being closed. Now all of a sudden you need parts. You're waiting till Monday anyway, and now you're starting the week off on a downward slope. So I think that's a great example of challenging the status quo, especially in the maintenance and reliability space, which is your forte. So cool. Do you have any examples on agency and flexibility, either with you being the recipient of agency and flexibility, where maybe a boss was giving you that, or vice versa, you were giving a team that you were kind of leading the opportunity to have that agency and flexibility?
So yeah, I do have one example.
Okay.
And it was when I was in this facility, and I had I guess it was senior director, probably a VP level in other organizations. Somewhat resistance to change, was very old school on it. And I am sometimes a person that you either like me or you don't like me at all, because sometimes I'm hard to understand. And for me, or for him, I came across as just somebody that, didn't just like to talk and didn't really do much work, was implementing change, but really didn't know what I was doing. And he was challenging it, the fact that he got with my boss and he wanted to know what I was doing every day. So he gave me this spreadsheet that he wanted me to fill out. Like, what are you doing throughout the week? And I remember, he had a lot of influence on determining what's going to be done in his facilities or not.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily report up to him, but he was very influential. And I remember spending all day writing what I was going to be doing that week. And I was trying to, make it look professional and stuff like that. And I really doubt he was going to look at it. But it was, it really dismissed a lot of what I could be doing. Mm-hmm. And it really started to put a challenge to that. Do you really find value in having me? And it felt just very uncomfortable. Yeah. To a point that I ended up leaving. Not directly core to that, but I just felt unvalued.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great example of what not to do when you're trying to create agency and flexibility and prop your team up to challenge the status quo. I think for some people, it's very intimidating to even question, why are we doing things the way we're doing them? I think a lot of people on the factory floor and everywhere in between, CEO down, have these ideas, but it is intimidating to be the one to raise your hand and ask the question of, why are we doing it this way? And to your point, it sounds like when you're being scrutinized to that level, and having to create these reports about what value you're bringing, it leads you to question everything that you do downstream. Like, can I send this email? Can I do that? I had a boss when I was first brought into corporate, and I call him micromanager blank, his name. And everybody in my organization who I've worked with over the last 5 to 7 years in the corporate landscape knows who I'm talking about when I would talk about him. And he had the same thing. We had to fill out a spreadsheet every week about what we were accomplishing. Then we had to meet in a one-on-one to go over the spreadsheet, and we had to copy him on every single email we sent. And this was how this guy went. And we were like water and oil. We did not really jive, because I'm one of the people in my personal approach that thrives with agency and flexibility. I don't need somebody to tell me how to do things. And frankly, if they told me how to do things, I would challenge them in why they thought that was the best way. So I remember getting kind of snippy with this boss in general, and just putting like on the report, I was like, preparing for my one-on-one with you, having a one-on-one with you, filling in the spreadsheet for the one-on-one with you. And he was like, I know you're having these meetings. You don't have to put that on. I said, well, frankly, I copy you on every email I'm sending. So like, I don't know what the point of all of this is actually. I said, didn't want to leave things out of the report, but that was me being probably less of a amicable employee and more of a something else.
I'm gonna answer the question, and I'm gonna ask you this question. If you had to do it over again, how would you do it different? And to my question, I'll go first. I really should have been communicating more with him, and I felt like I didn't have that level of authority, because I shouldn't even.
You felt intimidated about reaching out and talking directly with somebody who's up at that level.
Yeah, I did, and first time looking back on it, that if I did it today, I certainly would. I would be including him on several emails. I thought we were putting together a good case, but I really should have had just built more of a personal relationship with him than trying to say where I'm adding value to it.
Yeah.
I think that would have helped me out a lot.
I think so too. And I think but that's also part of the culture. And I think that's where behavioral science comes in real life. Like, what level of bureaucratic, what are you explicitly and implicitly communicating to your team about the chain of command and communication, right? That varies by leader. Some leaders I've worked with were VP running our entire department and would just call me directly for things that were related to me. Others will call my boss's boss to call my boss to call me to then report me back to, and up and down and play telephone down the line. Okay, it's different matter of opinion and style, which take it or leave it, both work. Not going to have an opinion about that. I mean, I do, but I'm not going to share it. I would not do anything differently than what I did with that particular manager, because I thought that it was completely redundant. I stand by the fact that it's completely redundant. What I do think that one of my other bosses, who is to this day my favorite boss, hands down, best boss, love him, still chat. He would just ask us at the end of the week, very similar to Elon Musk, just give me a high level 3 to 5 things that you accomplished in the past week. What are you working on next week? Email. Don't need a one-on-one for this. Let me know how I can support you. That's that. And I thought that was very well within reason. I thought that was improving the communication. And frankly, just this morning, I have one-on-ones with my boss on a weekly basis. It's been a while since we connected. I just went ahead and communicated to him, hey, here's a quick update on these 4 things that are top of my list, and I know top of yours. And I think that just really makes your boss be in a position to open up more agency flexibility in your work schedule if you improve that communication. So I think those are things that the worker or the team member could do to help be a part of increasing that agency and flexibility in their own day-to-day.
Yeah. So if I had to put a bow on this, I'd say this conversations was more about how to deal with bosses. And sometimes you are a leader, maybe you don't have the title for it, but managing up is also an important part of your responsibilities. And there's different ways. We could probably bring this to another episode too, and talk about, managing your manager. And I think some people would make some value out of it, because I know you've got tactics and I've got tactics, and I'd love to talk about it.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Well, on that note, we're out of here like finished goods.
All right. Goodbye, everyone. This is Factory of the Future, and we are out of here like finished goods. Stay tuned for our next episode of Factory of the Future, where we're exploring groundbreaking techniques and behaviors that are reshaping industrial landscapes. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review and help others discover the cutting-edge insights transforming manufacturing as we know it.